During its golden age, the thunder of Mongol hooves echoed across continents, forging one of the greatest empires in human history, an empire stretching unbroken from Asia to Europe. Under the command of fearless warlords, Genghis Khan led his armies south and north, carving out dazzling victories that burned brightly across the pages of epic history and would be remembered for eternity. Though Genghis himself could not defeat the passage of time, the bedrock he laid was so firm that his successors carried the Mongol Empire into yet another era of glory, even in the absence of the great Khan. Among those heirs stood a remarkable figure, Hulagu Khan, a grandson of Genghis. It was he who extended Mongol power deep into the Middle East. One of the campaigns that etched his name forever into the chronicles of history was the ferocious Siege of Baghdad. To some, it was a brilliant masterpiece of military art, a triumph of strategy and force. To others, it was nothing more than a grim massacre, a ruthless trampling of human dignity in pursuit of victory. But what truly happened in those fateful days? For centuries, Baghdad had stood as the proud capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, one of the most vibrant and prosperous cities at the crossroads of the world. Its prosperity began when the Abbasids overthrew the Umayyads and shifted the cultural heart from Damascus to Baghdad in 751. From that moment, the city became the very center of the empire, a gathering place of knowledge and power from every corner. At its height, Baghdad was home to nearly 1 million souls, defended by an elite garrison of 60,000 soldiers. Its bustling markets, brilliant scholars, and unmatched wealth transformed it into not only the beating heart of the Abbasid state, but also a sacred city, an unrivaled hub of trade and culture across the Islamic world. At the head of this flourishing empire stood the caliphs, rulers who held absolute power over their domains and spiritual authority across the entire Muslim world. Yet history's wheel turned. By the 13th century, the caliph's influence was waning. Two rising military powers, the Seljuks and the Mamluks, had shattered much of the Abbasid strength on the battlefield, casting their former prestige into shadow. Still, the caliphs refused to accept humiliation without resistance. Determined to cling to authority, they were willing to risk everything, even actions that many would later condemn as a betrayal of their people. At the very moment the Abbasids were slipping into decline, a storm was rising in the east. Under the banner of Genghis Khan, the Mongol Empire was grinding down every land it passed through. Inevitably, the paths of the Abbasid rulers and the Mongols converged. For the Abbasids, still clinging to their authority in the west, the Mongols appeared as a force they might harness, a weapon to counter the growing threats of the Seljuks and the Mamluks. For the Mongols, however, the Abbasids were simply a potential ally of convenience, another stepping stone toward greater conquests. Shared interest briefly tied the two powers together, creating what might be called an unusual diplomatic friendship. To win the favor of the great Khan, some Abbasid caliphs even aided Mongol campaigns in the Middle East. According to certain accounts, Crusader captives were handed over as tribute to the Mongols. Yet no matter how deep the Abbasids bowed, Mongol ambition remained insatiable. In reality, this act of carrying snakes to bite one's own kin only deepened Mongol disdain. To Genghis Khan and his generals, Abbasid submission was not loyalty, but weakness. Like that of an insect, ready to be crushed at any moment. The Mongols had no need for such allies. Their answer was war. Campaign after campaign was unleashed with one ultimate goal: the destruction of the Abbasid Caliphate. Genghis Khan, together with his third son, Ogedei Khan, ordered the great strategist Subutai to lead the assault. Their eyes turned to Erbil, the fortress city guarding Baghdad's northern flank, just 350 kilometers from the capital. Year after year, Mongol forces hurled themselves against the region. Yet victory was never assured. However fierce the Mongol cavalry, they could not always overcome defenders who knew every contour of their homeland. In 1238 and again in 1245, the Abbasids stood firm, repelling the invaders and seizing fleeting but vital victories that pushed the Mongols back, if only for a time. Still, the triumph was hollow. Though Abbasid warriors fought bravely on the battlefield, the court in Baghdad remained crippled by weakness. Instead of rallying their strength against the Eastern menace, the caliphs chose submission. They bent the knee, offered tribute, and hoped yearly payments might secure peace, or even a tenuous alliance to safeguard their throne. Yet within the Abbasid Caliphate, unity was nowhere to be found. The caliphs themselves shifted their stance toward the Mongols constantly, at times bowing low and sending envoys to sue for peace, at other times leaning toward rival powers and showing defiance. This lack of consistency steadily eroded the Abbasids' credibility. Meanwhile, powerful forces in the region, such as the Seljuks and the Mamluks, flatly rejected any notion of submission, condemning it as cowardice and a betrayal of the broader Islamic world. This clash of visions between a feeble Abbasid court intent on appeasement and determined Islamic factions bent on resistance threw the entire region into turmoil. The contradictions seeped into internal politics, fueling unrest and weakening the caliphate's already fragile authority. Unable to control its own house, the Abbasid regime projected to the Mongols nothing but confusion and weakness. In Mongol eyes, such hesitation and vacillation were nothing less than an insult, a direct challenge to the prestige of the steppe empire and the authority of the great Khan himself. Faced with this affront, Hulagu Khan would not tolerate delay. He resolved to unleash a massive campaign of conquest aimed at erasing the Abbasid Caliphate from the map and establishing Mongol dominance over the Middle East and the fertile lands of Mesopotamia. By 1258, the plan for Baghdad was set in motion, a campaign designed not merely to capture a city, but to impose Mongol power across Mesopotamia, Syria, and Iran. The great Khan entrusted the task to his brother, Hulagu Khan, granting him full command. The orders were absolute. Every Muslim kingdom must submit. And above all, the Abbasids of Baghdad were never again to defy the Mongols. Hulagu was to bring the caliph to heel, or at the very least force him back into the role of a compliant vassal, clearing the path for the Mongols' far greater ambitions in the west. The capture and destruction of Baghdad was seen as a decisive turning point. Mesopotamia had long been a thriving center of economy, culture, and military power. Without control of this heartland, the Mongols' grand designs on Iran, Syria, Egypt, and even Europe itself would remain beyond reach. Thus, the fall of the Abbasids was not only about restoring the pride of the steppe after years of defiance, it was about opening the gateway for Mongol supremacy across Asia and Europe. For this campaign, a colossal army was assembled, estimated by chroniclers at 100,000 to 150,000 soldiers, the largest force ever mustered in Mongol history. They were reinforced by 20,000 Christian troops from Armenia and the Kingdom of Cilicia, joined by 1,000 Chinese siege engineers, and supported further by contingents from Persia and Anatolia. All marched forward with a single mission: to crush the Abbasid Caliphate. Wherever they went, the Mongol host left devastation in its wake. Fortresses fell in an instant. Defenses crumbled like sand. Before reaching Baghdad, Hulagu Khan had already eradicated the feared sect of the Nizari Ismailis, the Assassins, storming their fabled stronghold at Alamut and executing their Grand Master. With the mountains subdued, the army rolled on, unstoppable, toward its true prize. At last, the Mongols stood before the walls of Baghdad. As was customary, Hulagu offered the city's ruler a chance to surrender. At that moment, the throne was held by Caliph Al-Mustaʿsim Billah, the 37th and final Abbasid ruler in the city. This was his one chance to spare Baghdad from the storm of blood that loomed on the horizon. But the caliph refused. Al-Mustaʿsim dismissed the ultimatum with confidence. Some would say arrogance. To this day, historians debate the reason for his fatal certainty. Some argue he truly believed the wider Islamic world would rally to his side, that the Mongols would pay dearly if they dared assault Baghdad's walls. Others point to the influence of his vizier, Ibn al-Alqam, who may have misjudged Mongol strength, or, as some suspect, harbored darker designs of his own. Whatever the reason, the Abbasid court had made no real preparations for the storm. The Caliph failed to strengthen the city's walls, nor did he call upon neighboring emirates or other Islamic powers for aid. On one side stood the battle-hardened Mongol host, surging forward like a flood at the height of its strength. On the other, a weakened Abbasid state, utterly unready for the trial ahead. The outcome seemed inevitable. When Hulagu Khan arrived, he encircled Baghdad in an iron grip. Mongol cavalry swept around the city, sealing it from all four directions like a rising tide. Yet once again, Al-Mustaʿsim underestimated his enemy. He ordered 20,000 horsemen to ride out into open ground. The Mongols reacted instantly, deploying their battle formations and annihilating the force in its entirety. From the city walls, the Caliph watched as tens of thousands of his finest cavalrymen were cut down, rivers of blood flowing across the plain. Only then did he grasp the scale of the catastrophe. But Baghdad was already trapped, its defenders broken, its fate sealed. On January 29, 1258, Hulagu launched the full assault. Hundreds of siege engines pounded the walls, raining stone and fire day after day. By February 5th, most of Baghdad's defenses lay in ruins. In desperation, the Caliph sent envoys to negotiate peace, but the Mongols executed them all. 3,000 of the city's nobles attempted to plead for mercy. They too were put to death. By refusing to surrender, Al-Mustaʿsim had condemned his city to ruin. On February 10th, the Mongols breached the gates and stormed into Baghdad. By February 13th, the city lay entirely in their hands, and one of the most horrific massacres in human history began. Baghdad, then home to nearly 1 million people, was sealed shut. No one was allowed to escape. Only the Eastern Christians were spared, protected because Hulagu's wife was a devout Nestorian. For the rest of the population, men and women, young and old, there was no mercy. They were slaughtered without distinction, or else dragged away into slavery. The Caliph himself, Al-Mustaʿsim Billah, was taken prisoner and forced to watch the annihilation of his city. Palaces, hospitals, mosques, even churches, nothing was spared. 36 great libraries were leveled or burned. Most tragic of all was the destruction of the legendary House of Wisdom, Bayt al-Hikmah, a repository of knowledge collected over centuries from every corner of the known world. Its priceless manuscripts were torn apart and hurled into the Tigris River. Chroniclers tell of ink from countless books staining the waters black, while the river itself became clogged with both parchment and corpses. So many bodies were cast into the current that, it was said, Mongol horses could cross the river by walking upon the dead. The scale of the slaughter left later generations aghast. The lowest estimates speak of 90,000 dead, while other chronicles claim the true number reached into the hundreds of thousands, perhaps even close to 1 million lives lost. As for the Caliph himself, Al-Mustaʿsim, after witnessing the annihilation of his city and his people, he and his family too met a tragic end. Hulagu Khan ordered the execution of the entire Abbasid household. One son was taken east into Mongolia, while a daughter was seized and forced into Hulagu's harem. The Caliph, bound by Mongol custom forbidding the spilling of royal blood upon the earth, was rolled into a carpet and trampled to death beneath the hooves of horses. The fall of Baghdad marked not only the destruction of the greatest center of learning in the medieval world, but also the end of Islam's golden age. Many historians regard the catastrophe of 1258 as one of the most devastating blows ever struck against the Islamic world, a disaster that extinguished centuries of brilliance in a matter of days. And so the debate lingers through the centuries. Was this calamity the inevitable consequence of war, or a monstrous massacre, an indelible stain on the legacy of Hulagu Khan? If you found this story powerful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more history uncovered, and share it to keep the past alive.